So good. Hey there, I'm Gray Estrada, Chinese medicine lifestylist, face reader, podcaster, educator, and artist. This is a quick crash course in face reading. So what is face reading? It's one of the numerous classical branches of traditional Chinese medicine. The two branches that are known the best in the West are acupuncture and herbalism. Here are some key ideas. 1. Form and function relate. A tiger's teeth and stripes point to a carnivorous diet and camouflaging with its environment. A monkey's long limbs and a light body point to agility while moving through the trees. Because humans are a part of nature, the same rules apply for us. Variations in our facial features points to aptitudes, talents, personality traits, and aspects of our physical and mental health. 2. Facial color and appearance relate to health. When someone has jaundice, their skin and eyes turn yellow. When people don't get enough sleep, they get dark under the eyes. Chinese medicine stipulates the colors on the face are indicative of various organ functions and is considerably more complex and nuanced than what's understood in Western medicine. 3. We all instinctively face read. Look at these photos and tell me which person you think is the ex-Navy SEAL and martial arts expert. Have a guess yet? If you're like 95% of the people I show this to in my courses, then you pick this man, Jocko Willink, who is indeed an ex-Navy SEAL and black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. The question is, why did you pick him? Because people's bone structure, muscle tone, coloring, wrinkles, and facial shapes all clue us into people's dispositions. Face reading is practical, and it's a skill that can be and should be developed. 4. Face reading is a form of profiling. The FBI and forensic scientists analyze handwriting, known as graphology, to assess and capture criminals because people's handwriting points to personality traits. Law enforcement and psychologists read body language to figure out if someone is lying or telling the truth. Face reading is simply another way to assess our personality, emotions, and experience. 5. Face reading is about pattern recognition. Chinese culture was excellent at documenting patterns observed in life and nature. These observations were recorded and passed down through hundreds of generations. Fast forward to modern times, and the Chinese have accumulated thousands of years of fascinating data relevant to the open-minded and modern human. It can't predict one's future, but does aim to identify rhythms and patterns in your personality that support your intrinsic nature and optimize the direction you take your life. 6. Face reading is relative, not absolute. It is not psychic fortune-telling. It's not about strict, definitive answers about people and their experiences. Acknowledging this keeps face reading humble and realistic. It's about assessing one's features in relation to priorly documented data and attempting to find relative patterns that can support the complexity of a person's aptitudes and experience. Face reading is indeed fallible, but that doesn't make it irrelevant. 7. Public persona and interpersonal nature. Chinese medicine relies heavily on yin-yang theory, which in a nutshell is the theory of polarities and opposition. Some examples are birth and death, men and women, night and day, hot and cold, expansion and contraction. This means the left and right sides of the body are said to carry their own polarity. In the context of face reading, the right side of someone's face relates to their public persona or extroverted nature, while the left side relates to their interpersonal nature or introverted nature. Terms and definitions: Jing, Qi, and Shen. These are known as the three treasures in Chinese medicine. It's said that if you guard these well, it ensures a life of health, longevity, and emotional resiliency. Jing relates to our genetic expression, bone structure, stature, how well we age, sexual vitality, and the talents we inherit. Qi relates to the energy we yield from the quality of our breathing, eating, feeling, thinking, and sleeping. Qi is not a mystical energy that allows telepathy or telekinesis. The closest and most modern definition of Qi is bioelectricity. Shen relates to the consciousness, anima, and personality of a person that can be seen, felt, and experienced, but not quantified. Mountains and rivers. This is a lens within face reading where we think of the face as a geography or landform. The areas with bony protrusions are mountains, and the areas containing moisture are seen as rivers. The mountains are the forehead, nose, cheekbones, jaw, and chin. The rivers are the eyes, ears, nose, and mouth. Assessing the mountains and rivers of a face points to a person's most ideal geography to live in. The 5 elements. Fire, earth, metal, water, and wood are seen as 5 phases or rhythms in the natural world that mankind has been dependent upon since the beginning. They are seen as non-self-aware personalities and/or the emotions of planet Earth. Because we're an extension of the natural world, these rhythms can be found in us in relation to our organs, emotions, activities, and facial features, amongst other things. Some people carry more of certain elements than others, but we all carry some of each. Enjoy the face reading. Welcome back, you guys, to another edition of the Face Reading. Today on the docket, we have Oprah Winfrey. So you guys all know Oprah is obviously incredibly successful, very lucky face, very prosperous, and there's a few different places where this shows up. So we're going to go through this, and we're going to just kind of give this a once-over and talk about all the key components that make Oprah's face very unique and very special and very lucky. So as always, the first thing we're going to start with are what we call the three treasures, Jing, Qi, and Shen. So her Jing, her constitutional essence, is actually quite good. She's got good bone structure, prominent features, she's got a full head of hair, and her Qi level, all right, when we talk about the vitality of the organs, which can be seen in the coloring of the face, she also looks very moderate and even keel across the board. So she doesn't have major discolorations. Her Jing is good. And that's great, given the complexity of her life and how much she does. That's actually quite good to see that her Jing is not being fundamentally hit, nor is her Qi, her vital energy that runs through the organs, and the things that she's doing, acquiring through life activities, sleeping, thinking, feeling, eating. It looks like what she's doing is working, and that's kind of amazing when people of this magnitude have such impact in the world and they're still able to keep it together. That's a good sign. So that's really good. Now her Shen, that light, that anima that comes off of her, is definitely on the deep side. So there's sort of a deep knowing and wise component that comes with Oprah's face. So when her face, if you look at her in her resting gaze, there's something wise and sort of maternal about her. Now, this is very indicative of people with strong water features, and we're going to get into that when we get into the 5-element section, but she has quite a bit of water, earth, and metal, and that water, she's got sort of a classic water face, definitely some strong other elements, but when we get down to Oprah and we look at her, very classic water face, big, broad features, very powerful, very strong. So one of the ways I like to look at face reading when we're doing this is look at people who are highly successful, look at what they do, look how much impact they're making, and then look at their features. So I always say, hunt from both directions, look at this from two different angles, and try to think of it like this. If you can begin to notice people's features that are successful, maybe entrepreneurs or people that have an impact like Oprah, start looking at their faces and then take inventory and take a mental snapshot and start looking for those features in other people. Because oftentimes what you can do then is, right, to be a good friend in life is to make those associations, encourage people if they don't know the winning lottery ticket they're sitting on, and also it gives you the very baseline skill of how to identify these features in other people. So again, we look at Oprah's features, broad, prosperous. When we look at her prominent features, there's a couple things that leap out. Very uniquely, her eyes, mouth, and nose all jump out at the same time. And that doesn't happen with everyone's face, but a lot of times when I'm looking at someone, I will look at their facial features and I will see and assess which features leap out the most as I'm looking at them. And with Oprah, interestingly, eyes, mouth, and nose leap out very strong, very quickly. Now that is sort of a powerhouse when you think about it. Most people are dominant in one or two areas. They'll have strong eyes and strong nose, or just a very strong nose or very strong eyes. But she's got three that leap out at once, which is, I think, kind of a blessing and a curse, because that's a lot of energy coming out of one face, but that is how her face rolls. That's just the way that she manifests. So when we look at, if you take a triangle, the shape of a triangle, and you turn it upside down so it's inverted, right? The base or the long portion is at top and it comes down to a point at the bottom. If you take that line across the top of the eyebrows and then down to the bottom of the mouth, and you focus and centralize just on that inverted triangle, which would encapsulate the eyes, the nose, and the mouth, this is one of the ways we can really focus in on the Shen of a person. So it's an upside down triangle. You look at those three things and you try to dull out or numb out the surrounding features and just focus on that triangle, and you really get a sense for the person's anima, for their spirit, their personality. And when you do that with Oprah, those features are dominant as all hell. And that's really cool, because people that have this kind of impact and this size usually have to have the Shen or spirit to back it up. You can't just have a moderately strong Shen or spirit to make this mark. So when you look at her that way, she's got quite a bit, all right? Now, when we take a look at her face in terms of the three sectors, which I talked about in the last video with Willem Dafoe, and if you haven't looked at this, I strongly encourage you to check out that video as well. But when we break down from the top of the hair to the bottom, or I'm sorry, to the line of the eyebrows, we're looking at the mental aspect of a person. From the from the top of the eyebrows to the bottom of the nose, this whole band in the middle is pragmatism, practicality. And then from the bottom of the nose to the chin is our emotional and instinctual nature. So the height of those three sectors points to how much energy is allocated to those aspects of ourself. So when we look at Oprah here, there's a picture here from her profile. And when you look at her profile, you'll notice that her forehead is retreated some, and then her nose, mouth, and lower portion of her face actually protrudes more. And so when we see this protrusion that comes forward, especially from the nose down, okay, where the mouth and the lips push forward, this is the emotional and instinctual areas. So even from profile, if a person's face juts out or protrudes or pushes out that way, this is a sign that the person runs more on the emotional and instinctual side. And I would say that's very true with Oprah. If you watch her in interviews, if you watch her talk to people, she's speaking from an emotional and instinctual place. She's not particularly heady or overly logical. She is feeling and reading into people, and this is obviously something that comes naturally to her. Her face does it. But also for someone that's going to be a good conversationalist, they're going to have that strong emotional and instinctual thread, because a lot of good conversations stem from how well do we plug into the emotionality of a person, and we listen to our instinctual response to their facial expressions, to what they're saying. And yes, you can definitely debate and do these things more in the logical head spectrum, but that's not really where Oprah thrives. She thrives in this interpersonal relationship around the emotions of people, the heart-centered stories that come out of her platform and what she does. So it makes a lot of sense. And even when you look at her from the frontal piece, you will see that she is slightly bottom heavy. All right. So she's got, I would say, her pragmatism from the bottom of her nose to the top of her eyebrows is probably the smallest, but it's not small. And then her forehead, right, this upper portion is maybe a very close second to that. And then she's a little more bottom heavy, again, pointing to the emotional and instinctual nature of Oprah. So this is different on some people. They have really high foreheads and they're more intellectual and they're more dominant up there. But it's interesting to note that she's definitely got that. So in terms of the prominent features, those are the things I see first. Now, when we look at her interpersonal nature and her public persona, you can see that the picture on the left, which is her public persona, is more wide. It's broader. It's more yang. It has a wider and fuller presence than her interpersonal nature, which is on the right. When you look at these two faces, you'll notice that the interpersonal nature is slightly narrower and the public persona is broader. Now, in the last video when I did Willem Dafoe, it's the same way. We see this with actors. We see this with public personalities. Very common. Now, it doesn't mean if you have a broader right side that intrinsically, if you have that broader right side, that you're just going to be, this type of person. It doesn't mean you're going to be necessarily in movies or that you're going to have this huge platform. But we see this consistently in these types of people and in this line of work. So she has the broader side. The cool thing about looking at the image here of both of her faces, is that both faces, if you look at the features, are highly symmetrical. Yes, the flesh and the bone is slightly bigger on her right side, but the features are highly symmetrical. Now, this is seen as highly auspicious in the context of face reading for a couple different reasons. One, when you have symmetry of any kind, right? Divine ratios, the golden ratio of phi, when we see symmetry, this is seen as auspicious because symmetry, divinity, and creation all have a link in Chinese medicine and other world traditions as well. Two, in the context of face reading, why this matters is when the features are very similar on both sides. That means the public persona and the interpersonal nature are very closely related, meaning, sort of in the context of a stand-up comedian, when George Carlin talked about this, and a number of different comedians have said this, when you are the same person on stage and off, you've really hit the mark and you've really started to align with what it means to be a true comedian, because you're being yourself. When we look at Oprah's face, you can tell when she's in front of the camera, when she's doing interviews, it's not contrived. It's very natural for her, and she is being herself. And that's true for most of us, right? Being ourselves is really highly critical if we're going to embody whatever the hell we're good at. But what's auspicious about that is that this sort of comes naturally to Oprah. It's part of her strong gift, is that she's able to be herself on camera and off. I'm sure she has her bad days, and I'm sure she's still trained and has very real skills in how to present, for the camera. But what we're seeing with these highly symmetrical features is that she presents as the same person in both scenarios. So she's not a two-faced person, basically, when we look at Oprah in a nutshell. Now, I think what's really interesting about her face, the thing that stands out the most, is this 5-element breakdown. Strong blend of water, earth, and metal. So with water features, we don't see a ton of sharp lines. What we see is very curved lines. In the 5-element theory, all of the elements have different shapes or associations, shapes that associate with the element. So for instance, for the fire element, it's a triangle. For the wood element, it's a rectangle. Circle for metal and a square for earth. And then for water, curved lines. Basically anything that has curved or undulating edges is going to be water. And when we look at Oprah's face, you can really see this. Everything curves, soft, round features. Really beautiful to see, actually. And she also has, with these rounded features and these big broad features, which is earth and water, but a lot of water, that depth of knowing that comes out of her face. What we also see with this is she's got a pretty sizable amount of metal. Now, where does this show up? When we see the metal element expressed in the facial features, we see this in the spaces between features. So when you look at Oprah, which is, I would say, almost the antithesis to Willem Dafoe, if you go back and watch that video, he's very fiery, scrunched, and crinkled. She is not. Broad, open. Now, mind you, African-American people, very luckily, like Mexicans oftentimes, they age really well because of that heavier subcutaneous layer of fat. So obviously she's going to get less wrinkles given her genetic heritage, but also big, broad, round features. So this is metal. When we see spaces between the eyebrows, spaces, clear open spaces from the eyes to the bottom of the cheeks, just very smooth and open. So if you think of it, the metal element relates to beauty and composition. That's a big piece of the metal element. And so when we see space, it's like negative space in a painting. So they tell you when you paint something, don't place it directly in the center, have it slightly off center. And this is true with photography as well. And you have this negative space. And that's a metal feature. That's a metal quality. And her face has quite a bit of that. Now, metal is usually very square and also angular. She doesn't have that. But in terms of the spacing of her features, she has quite a bit of metal. Metal is about cleanliness. This is about presenting in a polished way. Metal element is about beauty and creating space around you and creating spaces, right, metaphorically in your life that house beauty. And I would say collectively what Oprah's done for the world has been just that. And that's part of this metallic energy coming out of the face. So it's pretty cool. I really like looking at her face, and it's a really unique blend of water, earth, and metal. She doesn't have a ton of fire in terms of the classical shapes. She does have some points. She's got pointy inner canthus. When you look at her eyes, there's definitely some sharp points there. That means she can be very cutting with her words. So when the inner canthus is very sharp, that means people are articulate and cutting with words, but it doesn't necessarily mean that she's going to be insulting or hurtful in the words, but the words penetrate. They get through. And I would say, given her line of work, that's definitely true for Oprah. She has a way with words. She knows what to say and how to say it. And we see that. So again, a beautiful blend of water, earth, and metal. And interestingly, what's cool about Oprah too is she has some very similar features in terms of someone else who I think has similar features to her is Martin Luther King. So if you look at this picture of Martin Luther King and you look at a picture of Oprah, what we see are some of these very broad features. Now, of course, right, genetic heritage, African American people are prone to features that are like broad, broad nose, open round features. Definitely true, right? Europeans can be more angular. You look at Chinese, the shape of the eyes, the shape of the cheekbones and jaw. Like genetic lineage definitely has an impact, but when we look at them face to face, feature to feature, some very real similarities, okay? Broad, open features. Both have a lot of water and earth, soft, rounded, plump features. Very lucky in Chinese medicine. So in Chinese medicine, the earth element is seen as the center cogwheel to all the other elements. So you have fire, wood, metal, and water surrounding earth. Earth is like the mother to all of the other elements. So earth is in Chinese medicine is seen as very lucky because it gives birth to all things. But then also, my teacher Lillian Bridges talks about this pretty consistently. Her contention, though, is where things start is water. Water is sort of the source of life. And even if we look at Western science, there's definitely a case to be made that the algae started in the oceans and then evolution came out of the oceans, came out of the water. So to have a lot of water and a lot of earth is lucky in Chinese medicine. So pretty cool to see. But she has those features like Martin Luther King, broad, prosperous, open. Now, Martin Luther King had definitely, a very unfortunate end, and I'm going to do a video on him at some point. But I think it's always good to identify people that have large impact, and when you can see the commonality between the features. And this is what I do. I look for features amongst people who have had big impact, and Martin Luther King and Oprah have contributed quite a bit to the world. So I think that's always great and beautiful to see. Now, mountains and rivers. In terms of geography of where Oprah would do really well. So because she has a lot of water, she has a lot of earth, and definitely some metal, Oprah would do really well in a place like New Zealand, somewhere like the Shire. So if you guys, I've been to, for my honeymoon, I went to New Zealand, and I actually went to, the Shire, which was the film set for Lord of the Rings. And it's these beautiful, lush rolling hills with some bodies of water. And New Zealand, obviously, has, huge access to very large bodies of water. And the thing that when I look at her face is because she's got so much water, okay? The water features, her eyes are big, her nostrils are big, her mouth is big. Okay, she's got pretty sizable ears. Those are all water features through this lens of mountains and rivers. So because of that, she would do well with big water, big rolling hills, not sharp, jagged hills or mountains. So when the features are that round and soft, she also has to have smooth rolling hills. That would be like the ideal place for her. So again, this kind of points to when we want to think of the face as a topography, and the topography of smooth rolling hills, but that has broad open space, we need to apply that to the geography that she would be most ideally suited for. So I think personally somewhere like New Zealand, she could definitely get away with, probably a warm tropical place as well, somewhere beautiful. So that would be my guidance for her. Now, when we look at the 5 elements, she does have, just backtracking a tad, with the earth element, okay? The earth element, she's got an earth mouth, classic earth mouth, very full lips, very large mouth. And a large mouth is very good. So the earth element relates to house and home, food, rest, lounging, contributing to other people's lives, being sweet. All of these things relate to the earth element, and people with the earth element and a full mouth, they're also going to like leisure. They're going to like their downtime. They're going to like the pleasurable aspects of life. Now, you could easily say, well, we all like nice things. This is true. But for earth people, it's a necessity. They really have to have comfortable chairs. They really need to have comfortable clothing. It's a necessity for them when they have that much, because people that give a lot need a lot of comfort. That's just the way it is. It's sort of like the energy that they put out in terms of giving and being sweet and maternal and earthy is going to need to be supported by a lot of comfort, a lot of relaxation. And that's just the relationship between the two. Now, the other thing that I like to bring up with Oprah is if you look at this picture of Oprah when she was younger and you look at a picture of her now, you can really see the evolution of a face, what happens, how the bones change shape, and how the Shen really changes over time. So this is a big piece of Chinese medicine, how we live our life, how well we think, breathe, rest, move. All these things matter and are going to have a very real effect on how the topography of our face changes. And when you look at Oprah from when she was a young woman till now, you can really see how her face has changed. The countenance, the Shen, obviously, because she's just gotten older, and the Shen and the spirit gets older and wiser. But then the bone structure, she actually has a more squarer jaw. Her chin is a little more pronounced. She's got, her forehead actually looks more open energetically on the top. She's got definitely some very real growth that happened over the course of her life, and that's a beautiful thing. And one of the things to always consider, one of the good luck things in Chinese medicine is if you get better looking with age. Now, of course, women will be like, men in general get better, right? We're allowed to get gray, we're allowed to go bald and all these things. But fundamentally, when we're talking about just the Shen of the face, the features, okay, taking out gender, when we look at the features of a face, this is what we're talking about. If a person gets fundamentally better looking, the features are better spaced, the bones have filled in, this is very good. You don't want to get, technically uglier as we get older. That means the life choices haven't been as good. Now, she has gotten better looking. She's got better features, broader, more open, and that's a good sign. That means that the path she has carved in life has nourished her and her terrain has evolved as such. So that's a beautiful thing. Now, when I look at the lifestyle guidance, okay, for longevity for Oprah, I think the thing that I would be encouraging to Oprah, which I think she already knows, but I would really stress this to her, is having wood activities to shore up her deficiencies. Oprah doesn't have a ton of wood. She's got a strong jaw, but it's fleshy. Doesn't have a real, cut features. Doesn't have a very long rectangular face. Her eyebrows are, I would say, on the moderately, they're strong, and I think she probably trims them, but they're relatively full. But she doesn't have a ton of wood. That's not her strongest element. So always, it's good to shore up the deficiencies with the elements we're not particularly strong in. So the wood activities are exercise, physical activity, physical movement. And we all know that Oprah, throughout the course of her life and her career, has definitely battled weight. Oprah was very heavyset in her youth and has, always kind of battled it. And this is very true for earthy and watery people. Fundamentally, they're going to battle these things because water is heavy and full and liquid, and earth can just bog down and be heavy, right? Like wet soil. This is the person, it's a kapha is what they talk about in Ayurveda. Very similar in terms of people that have a lot of water and earth, they're going to battle their weight. I have some of this to a degree. My constitution runs towards earth and water. And so I have to intermittently fast. I have to be very active. I've got to be on top of it. But one of the things that we want to look at is Oprah is a beautiful representation of like a full-framed human being. And when we look at the old sort of classical symbolism, there are two renditions of the Buddha. The Buddha when he was an ascetic and he was just meditating and fasting all the time and was super skinny and deficient, but was very connected to the cosmos. And then later in life, he was like, fuck it. I'm going to eat full and I'm going to get jolly and big. And there's the merry Buddha. So there's like the ascetic, meditating skinny Buddha rendition. And then there's the merry, rich, full Buddha who's laughing all the time and eating and just being like, I love life. And that earthy Buddha, the fuller one, is actually seen as more lucky in Chinese medicine. That one is seen as the one who is really indulging in life and saying yes to everything. And yes, there's some extra baggage, but like a baby, when babies are chubby and they're little, right? The chubby Buddha is more aligned with that early life stage. And so when a person is able to be highly successful and they make their size work for them, this is seen as good. This is just the differences in how the human form can show up. But Oprah definitely has some of that healthy, loving, compassionate Buddha energy. She's done a lot for the world, and she's very altruistic, and she's human, right? She's not perfect. She's not, she's not a god, but she's done so much, and that's that beautiful, beautiful earth and water. Just a big happy earth mama. It's a beautiful thing, and I say big not as a way to like take a shot at Oprah, like she's big. I mean that in her energy and her spirit. Like it's just a very pervasive energy. It's very cool to see, and part of what she's done so well. So wood activities, Oprah needs to exercise just to shore up the deficiencies. Her body is prone to excess. So I would say, daily exercise of some kind and nothing too strenuous. High intensity things that push and strain her body. Oprah doesn't have enough wood to do that. I wouldn't do things that are like, explosive plyometrics and just things that are going to be really physically demanding. She doesn't have the facial constitution for that, but water activities, okay? Tai Chi, walking, swimming, right? Things that are easy on the body and low impact, elliptical exercise, things that move the blood without too much high intensity, right? The Rock has a lot of wood and he can handle that, but not everyone's built the same. So I would say, less for her. Now, I would also say to continue doing water and earth activities because that nourishes that which she is, and she already does that. So I would, this is part of the guidance when I give lifestyle guidance to my clients and I read their face. I'm like, look, these are the elements that you're strong in. So you also need to continue doing these things just to nourish that which you are, because that's part of how we cash in on our gifts and how we navigate life well is we got to lean into what we are and what we're good at. She has a lot of water and earth. So things that make her think deeply, right? Probing into the deeper layers of life, which she does. That's all water. Being fluid, going with the flow, quite literally, right? The metaphor translates just being smooth and easy, going with that earth, being of house and home, being sweet, being tender, being loving, eating good food, hanging with good people. These are all earth activities. So I would say continue to do those things. And then I would also say that she also needs, Oprah has fire, definitely, especially when she smiles. People with this big of Shen can't have small fire, but her fire is also not huge. And in terms of features, so the things that I would say for Oprah: fire activities, social engagement with people that she really loves, and being spontaneous, saying yes quickly, going, not hesitating. And I think this would be very hard for someone like Oprah because she's got so much to do that saying yes to things is like, no, I need to check my schedule. But part of how we would just tonify her fire is just to be in those social engagements. And also, engaging fire breaks up the heaviness of water and earth. So these are the things that I would tell her. The only place where I see a little bit of depletion in, excuse me, a little bit of depletion in Oprah is she has started to get this line right here. When we, excuse me, you guys, I've been getting over a cough. My daughter had it. So when we see the horizontal crease right here that starts to form, this is physical lifestyle depletion. This usually means the person is doing a little too much physically. Now, that doesn't mean she's exercising too much necessarily. What that means is that she's very physically active in terms of where she takes her body. Filming, doing books or book signings, talking to people, going to places, flying and traveling to do seminars, like whatever that is, that physical movement through space is, and that's a reality. She's very busy and she makes a big impact, so that's going to come into effect. And what's kind of interesting is that Oprah's got good purpose lines. These lines, I think they're called nasolabial grooves, as they form. So she's got them, and interestingly, she's got this line that sort of almost connects. These lines almost make an implied connection into this lifestyle depletion, which is sort of interesting. In face reading, what that would kind of mean is her purpose lines, the deeper these are, the more embodied a person's purpose is, and they get deeper as we get older. But these that connect into this lifestyle depletion line also means that her purpose fundamentally probably depletes her some, which seems pretty fair, but it's definitely there. So it's just something for her to separate and say, okay, here's my purpose. I know my purpose, but I also have to moderate my purpose to the point where it doesn't deplete me also. And that's probably a very real delicate balance for her, given the size and impact of what she does. So you guys, that is the read on Oprah Winfrey today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you guys would like a reading from me, please reach out. You can reach me at Omni Health and Lifestyle, and enjoy your day.